Hello and welcome to Cooking the Books with Heather. Today we're going to be making a pickle plate for everyone from Vivian Howard's Deep Run Roots cookbook. This is going to be a fermented pickle and the base of it is mostly okra. I've been growing okra this year and it's been very prolific. So we've had a lot of fried okra this year. We've done some of the other recipes in this book without filming them because we'd already done that. But this is one we hadn't filmed yet. So I'm going to be making a half recipe of this today because we don't need that much pickled okra, honestly, even though it'll keep for, I think she says 2 months in the refrigerator when it's all done. But this takes a little while and we're going to go ahead and get it started. I think she says about 4 days. I have a fermentation crock. You can use any sort of pot for it that you want that will hold all of the stuff. I happen to have gotten into pickles and fermenting pickles last year, so I already have this, so I didn't have to get it for this recipe. So this should be clean, which it is. She says sterilized. I'm not going to bother with that at this point, but I do clean it out, give it a good wash every time. So what we're going to do is we're going to put in half of our okra. And like I said, I'm doing about a half recipe, so this will not fill this crock. And she says you need a 2 or 3 gallon crock for this, or container of some sort. I did scrub these and she said if you have furry okra you might want to do that because it can end up looking a little iffy because the stuff that ferments can kind of attach to the furs. Anyway, I did scrub them and trim off the ends, but you'll want these to be pretty fresh. And now we're going to add the other vegetables. Oh no, half of our corn. So I have this fresh shucked corn that I cut into, she says 2-inch-ish lengths. I cut each piece into about 4 pieces, and that's fine. And I'm not going to use quite all of this because I think the full recipe says 5, and I'm just gonna probably going to use all but 2 pieces of this just to be half. We're also going to put in a jalapeno. This also came from my garden, just fresh picked, also washed. I've got some garlic cloves that I smashed. Those are going to go in. Okay. Then I'm going to put in the rest of our okra and then the rest of our corn. Since I'm doing a half batch, there's not a huge amount of difference than just putting it all in at once. I'm going to leave the end piece. In fact, I'm going to leave 2 end pieces out because I don't like those as much. I like the ones that are sort of cut. So there we go. That is all of the things that we are going to pickle today. I'm going to move this to the side. And now we have to make our brine. I think, oh yeah. I'm going to go ahead and put the peppercorns in here. These are just whole black peppercorns. So this is about half of the water that I need, even for this half batch. I'm going to try to dissolve all of the salt in it. This is warm water, but if I can't, I will have to I don't know, pour some out and then add some more water, but I need 2 of these. But it's a lot of salt to dissolve into this. My larger measuring cup that would be what I need is in the refrigerator with grape juice in it because I'm making jelly. So I am using pickling salt here. You want to use salt that does not have iodine in it, so, or any other sort of extra potential off flavored minerals. Pickling salt is basically just salt. You can use kosher salt because it's also just salt, but since it's a cup measurement here, if your kosher salt is like the Diamond Crystal kosher salt, you might want to figure out how much the salt you're using should weigh and then just weigh it instead of measuring it by the cup. I think we've gotten it all pretty much dissolved, so that's great. And we're going to pour this over, and then I'm going to get this filled up again and pour the rest over, and that should mix it up pretty well. And you need enough that it will cover all of your vegetables. That's the important part of fermenting. Anyway, this one is just cold water, so I don't want it to be too hot. And now they all look like they're floating, if you can see that there, but that's what these are for. So if you're using, if you don't have these are basically weights that will keep the vegetables below the top of the brine, which is very important because anything that comes up out of the brine could potentially mold. You don't want that. So I have these, and I'm going to put both of them in kind of at the same time because we really want them to hold down all of, there we go. And it's holding down all of the vegetables so it won't float up and get mold on it. Now, she does say that if you get some white scum on top, don't freak out. That's perfectly normal. Just skim it off before you take these things off and it will be fine. That's, I think, a con yeast is what I've read. And I've gotten that before and it's been absolutely fine. All of my pickles have turned out perfectly fine. I don't care. So that's good. But she says to cover it with cheesecloth or a clean dish. Mine has a cover and it's just to keep stuff from falling into it, really. You could also put cheesecloth or something over this if you want to. And this has to sit in a dark spot for 4 days. So I'll show you what this looks like in 4 days. And that's the recipe. Some salt water, some vegetables, a little bit of spices, and lots of time. So we'll see you in 4 days. It has been almost exactly 1 day for these pickled okra and corn and a little bit of jalapeno. And you can already see that there's a little bit of bubbling going on, and that is the fermentation. That's what you want. Okay. My pickles have been fermenting for 4 days, and now it's time to test them. And if you can see, there is some stuff floating in it. It's kind of yellow, but I think that's probably from the corn. I'm going to skim as much of that off as I can. It smells very corny. There's a little bit of white, but a lot of this is just yellow, which I believe is from the corn, because none of my other pickles, fermented pickles, have ever done that. So I'm just trying to get as much out as I can. All right, so I'm going to use some paper towels just to sort of wipe down the sides because that's where a lot of it collects. All right. It is supposed to be cloudy. This is normal. Going to use this to help me get my weights up. There we go. All right. So I'm going to taste one of my smaller ones and see if it is tangy enough. It's very salty, but not super tangy. So we can let it go for another day or two at this point. I'm going to do that because I like my pickles kind of tangy. So we'll be back in a couple days to basically do all of that again. So I probably won't show it to you again. I'm going to rinse these off, put them back in, make sure everything is underneath the brine. And when we do it again, we will do the same thing I did, pull off anything that looks kind of suspicious off the top. And then we will transfer this to a container where it can be covered by its brine. So probably a large plastic container or a glass container, anything that will hold it to be covered by the brine to store it in the refrigerator. So we will show you what it looks like in a couple days and let you know what we think in just a minute. On this episode of Cooking the Books with Heather, you watched me make a pickle plate for everyone from Vivian Howard's Deep Run Roots. This is a fermented pickle that has, per the recipe, mostly corn and okra. Those are sort of the main components. It's got a little bit of, it's got some jalapeno in it, but you can put basically anything, any vegetable you want. She says you could put in green tomatoes or other types of peppers or green beans, but as described, you know, as in the book, it is mostly okra and corn. So this morning, so about 2.5 days after the last time we checked on it, I decanted it, put it in this half-gallon jar. And so basically a half recipe filled up a half-gallon jar. And you want to cover it with the brine. And I'm going to be storing this in the refrigerator, she says, for up to 2 months. So we'll have to figure out what we're going to do with some pickled corn and okra. So I'm not a huge fan of pickled okra. And if you don't like the sliminess of okra, this is not the recipe for you because it is pretty slimy. So definitely has a little more tang today than it did, but it's still not like a vinegar pickle. It's not quite that vinegary yet, not that sour. You can always try these and let them go longer to be like you like. So just let them ferment for as long as you like. But you do have to be careful with anything that might grow on top of your stuff. But you can mostly skim it all off, and as long as you keep all of the vegetables below the level of the brine, it will all be fine. So I'm not entirely sure what we're going to do with this. We'll have to figure it out. I have seen okra used as sort of a garnish, or pickled okra used as a garnish on different recipes. So the corn also is just very corny. A little salty, a little pickly, but it tastes mostly like corn. And the corn, I feel like flavored all of it and more than I was expecting. I don't get any heat from the jalapeno, but I get a lot of the corn flavor. So, oh well. Let me know in the comments down below how you like to use pickled okra, what you would do with this, and let me know if you tried it. If you enjoyed watching me make this, please give me a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and come back and watch me make something else next week.